Hello dear students, I am Vinay M S. I welcome you to this digital learning platform of Department of Collegiate Education. Today in this video we are going to focus on the idea of the countryside and the city in Victorian England. This concept is part of the background study to paper 3 Victorian Literature. So let's understand the title first. You see here the two words, the countryside and the city in Victorian England. So you know that Victorian England is referring to the era of Queen Victoria, the reign of Queen Victoria that ranged between 1837 and 1901. So the England of her time is referred as Victorian England, and during that time the idea of the countryside, that means the rural rustic part of England, and the idea of the city are discussed here. See, a kind of contrast is there between both. You can see the country on the one side and the town, the cities on the other side, rural and urban. A contrast is there here. So in this part, you are going to see the changes, the main characteristics, the developments that happened in both the sides, and they have their reflection, their representation through the valuable literature produced in that era. So the major thing that you observe in the phase of this or the era is that advancement in science and technology. There happened a lot of developments in field of science and technology that resulted in the rapid industrialization, isn't it? You see, greatest inventions of the world, they began their or they started their phase during the Victorian era. So these changes in the or advancements in the science and technology changed the attitude of the people that naturally affected the social and economic sphere of Victorian England too. So the one of the major aspects of the science and technology is, of course, is industrialization. So industrialization brought rapid changes in both the countryside and the city, because it affected the livings of the people in an immense way, and it brought several changes in the very basic structure of the society itself. So in the first part, let's focus on the countryside. If we take up the countryside, you see there were lot of changes in the agriculture. The cottage industries are industries within the homes which were producing using small scale labors were almost decaying during the age, because the large scale industries using innumerable quantity of labor they were set up, right? So the major characteristic of the countryside was there was a decay in the cottage industries. Small scale ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಕಾಟೇಜ್ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರೀಸ್ಗಳೇನಿತ್ತು ಅವುಗಳು ನಾಶವಾಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಯಿತು. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಟೇಕ್ ಅಪ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಎ ಸ್ಪಿನ್ನಿಂಗ್ ವೀಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಸ್ಪಿನ್ನಿಂಗ್ ವೀಲನ್ನು ಬಳಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಕ್ಲೋತ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಯಾವಾಗ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಸೆಟಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೋ, ವೇರ್ ವಿತ್ ಲೆಸ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಖರ್ಚಿನಲ್ಲಿಯೇ they started producing the textile. In that context, who will pay much attention to the spinning wheels? Because it takes time, it takes expense, it takes other problems also they are associated with that. Naturally we notice here that cottage industries existed in the rural side. They were the source of livelihood for many. They started decaying and they were replaced by large scale industries. Mostly they have their origin in the city sides. So this affected the industrial part. But on the other hand, we see a kind of rapid development in agricultural field. Okay, so agriculture also invited the science, the innovation, or preparing of new machineries using the industries contributed to agricultural development also. So you see, very much scientific approach to agriculture was started. Even today you observe several scientific instruments, scientific mediums are used to farming. Same kind of things were initiated then, isn't it? Of course, the beginning nation started then itself. And as a part of that, you see a scientific method in the sense of crop rotation. People developed awareness about the importance of crop rotation and getting more and more yield out of that. Using machineries in place of manual labors. Of course, large machineries, maybe for example, tiller, right? Tiller was used in place of manual labor. Like that, machineries started their machineries were used, and there was storage systems, scientific storage systems were used. So these are all resulted in the very structure of the agricultural society changed, because science and agriculture together brought several rapid changes in the agriculture. The production increased, of course, but the manual labor decreased. Naturally, you observe here that the scope for human entry or human role gradually reduces. Of course, those who handle the machines, they need to have skills. Still, the manual labor in large scale got reduced. And another important feature of this period is enclosure of land. Enclosure of land is dividing the land into small portions. Maybe, yeah, you can see here in very this part here, you can see a kind of mound here, right? You can see here a kind of mound, right? A small portions can be seen here, right? So here people worked. Sometimes even a single person can handle these things. A large boundary of area was divided into small portions, and this created the very geographical feature of the land, agricultural land, into small portions, and they were fenced sometimes. We see creation of small hedge or wall enclosed fields. You can see that here also that there is a fence, a mound of soil. There you can observe hedges and wall enclosed fields were created, and this supported the management of the land. Even a small farmer or with limited labors, they were able to manage it. So therefore, usage of labor reduced to limited labor. What happens if the labor used by the agriculture reduces? The people who depended on agriculture lose their job. Naturally, what happened? The rural unemployment, the concept of rural employment was found in that era. The rise of industries on the one hand offered a lot of employment for people, but on the rural side, in the countryside, because of machineries, because of less use of labor, rural unemployment was going on. And then on the other hand, when the employment opportunities are not in in bounty or in plenty of numbers, naturally more and more laborers compete for that available employment opportunities. This will make the landlords to offer low wages also. People started working for low wages also. Naturally, this led to acute poverty. Rural England, the countryside England witnessed acute poverty because the landlords become more and more richer, right? On the other hand, the poor workers, they worked and they remained the poor, and they became they lived a life of acute poverty. What happens when all these problems happens? Naturally, human tendency is to escape from the problem. They started escaping. I mean, in the form of migration from the rural England into the industrially set up urban locales. People started migrating to urban areas, and the rural population or the process of depopulation started in the rural area. You see a famous poem of Oliver Goldsmith in 1770, The Deserted Village. The very title, The Deserted Village, it was found in many villages during the Victorian England also, because people in search of job, in search of their livelihood, migrated to the city centers, cities, towns. There they found their employment. So therefore, population in the rural area reduced, density of population become less, and the population in the urban increased, because with the inflow of population from the rural area to city, centering of the population took place in the cities. Therefore a kind of connection is seen between both, right? So, and another thing you observe here is in the rural area, in the idea of the countryside, is oppression of the working class. As we have already pointed out, there was low wage for the workers. That was one type of exploitation, and other varieties of exploitations where there was domination of the landlords, and they were made to work overtime, and they were made like slaves. So, and gradually whenever these problems exist, people try to unite and fight for that. So there was no problem, sorry, there was no scope for that also. Landlords with having power and money, they started suppressing the voice of these working class, and the oppression of the working class continues. So you see, on the other side, the landlords, the owners of the land, become more and more rich. They become the richer, the progress take place, because they made profit out of new method of farming. On the one way, new method of farming, scientific method of farming, almost increased their production, food production, for example, geometrically in huge quantities. On the other hand, they access new markets also, because growing urban areas provided them a good marketplace. There was also invention of introduction of railways. The railways provided them the way to reach the urban markets. They used it, they transported their products into the city ports, and there they marketed and earned more and more profit, much profit out of that. And these are all the basic characteristics of the countryside. You see so many problems also, but the other side of the country was so beautiful. There were reformative measures. There was gradual improvement in the countryside, because you see, Queen Victoria's era is one of the major hallmarks of the British history. Okay, you have heard of the phrase probably, the sun never sets for England. A kind of ideal that they are the rulers of the world was running throughout the country, and this was even evident in England, because she gave a lot of reformative measures. As a part of that, the rural area developed a lot, but it never lost its beauty. The rustic beauty, the romantic embrace of the rural England continued to exist, and the romanticism of the earlier era continued through the writings of the Victorian writers also. It echoed the beauty of the nature. It responded to that serenity of nature. Okay, so we can recall those famous lines of William Cooper, who says, God made the country and man made the town. Here, the country, according to William Cooper, is made by God. That means it's so beautiful and it's perfect. Whereas, in his opinion, the town is of man, artificial. So, you see, writers' response to this idea of the country, they looked at the green, I mean the nature, the beauty of the countryside. You see, major writers, they focused on that part. Of course, they also highlighted social problems existed in the rural side, but you also see a kind of appreciation for the countryside when contrasting it with the city. They appreciated the rustic life despite its problems, therefore. And there was a portrayal of nature and rural traditions. You see, a lot of writers focused on the rural traditions. You see, the pastoral ambience, pastoral setup, right? That is described through the various writings of various writers. Many writers, major writers, responded to the rapid changes and the basic features of the countryside through their works. They responded to these major trends. You see, famous writers like George Eliot, Jane Austen, Thomas Hardy, or even the poets like Browning, Tennyson, or Arnold. They all had their voice for this beauty of the countryside, and literature documented the beauty of the countryside so effectively during Victorian England. So when we come to the other side of this present presentation, that is the cities. You see, when the idea of the city comes, definitely it replaces. You see, instead of natural trees, you see concrete trees there, right? I mean, buildings. So you see, the background there was industrialization. Therefore, a rapid phase of industrialization was going on in the cities. When the industrialization is there, it gives way to urbanization. There was a rapid urbanization also. So mighty factories, huge scaled production happened through mighty factories. They were set up, and this naturally shifted the very center of economy from the rural to the cities. Though till that century, the center of economy was rural England. Agriculture was the predominant thing, right? So now in this century, or during the Victorian England, the production center, I mean center of economy, shifted to the cities because major industries and large scale production happened in the city centers. So then it found a rapid and irrational urbanization. That's very important in the city. You notice rapid urbanization is okay, but irrational is dangerous, as we talked of the same thing in the last video also. Irrational means it was almost unscientific. There was no proper plan for urbanization. That resulted in the increase of slum areas, increase in the population irrationally, or it also resulted in the pollution, variety of pollutions, right? When the population increase, pollution do happen. When the pollution happens, there increase in the poor living condition, because pollution contributes to or results in bad living condition also. People started facing health problems. Spread of health problems was another major issue, a major idea there. Several epidemics or health problems started spreading. So people led a poor living condition, devoid of basic infrastructure facilities, because many part of the city were, provided shelter in the slum areas. They were devoid of basic facilities. When we come to the other side, there was within the industry there was exploitation of the working class. The working class was the emerging class. It was the emerged class in that century, but they also faced a lot of exploitation from the capitalists who were profit minded. They made them work overtime. I mean, put overburden of work on them, and this also led to oppression of women and children. We, as already discussed in earlier sessions, women and children were used as a cheap labor source. I mean, they were paid very little, less amount, and therefore, so many women and children were workers. They were the sufferers because owners, capitalists exploited them. Oppression was carried on them because with the limited wage, they were made to work. On the other hand, other sides, child labor was another problem, right? So children at the age of going to school and studying, they were made to work. And again, you see, skill matters in industry. When laborers or workers were unskilled, they were made to work brutally. They were beaten, they were whipped, and they were punished to work. That's why they were treated very brutally. Unskilled laborers were treated very brutally then. If you watch one of the movies that I can recall here is Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. You see where there is a scene there within industrial setup Chaplin works. He was made to work brutally because his life was almost conditioned with the way machines run there. Even a machine was invented to feed the workers because there was no sufficient time for them to take their food. It was also mechanical. I mean, a machine was invented, and Chaplin becomes the testing, person for that. He was used as a person to test that machine. So you see, this kind of brutal treatment of the workers continued, and they never offered good working condition. Also, there was unhygienic working condition, poor working condition, excessive working hours, poor working condition was there. There was overburden of work. When all these things there, naturally it affect the worker psychologically. Many workers suffer from loneliness, melancholy, or even depression. You see, therefore, psychology, the latest of the sciences, gathered its face in the 1850s. During 1850s, Wilhelm Wundt, the father of psychology, developed that, and it became popular after that because there was a need for studying the psychology mindset of the workers then also. You see, then the other side, a new sprout. The idea of the city also had the positive side. You know, when any change takes place, that has either positive and negative sides also. The other side of the city was very interesting, very hopeful, because it ushered in new opportunities of all sorts. I'm mentioning here all sorts particularly because it was opportunity for those who want to develop themselves, opportunity for those who want to develop their firm, and also it was opportunity for even thieves, smugglers also. That kind of things also increased. And you see probably in Dickens novels, or even for example in Great Expectation, the way these things are carried on, so are highlighted. Okay, so here it provided therefore a kind of new opportunities, a forum for new opportunities. And transportation facility improved a lot, basic infrastructure improved a lot, because with the introduction of the railways, transportation became very easy for people. The growth of overall infrastructure was seen. Building of bridges, building of great huge sized buildings, they all started in this era. Therefore, overall infrastructure of the city across the across the England developed. Then the Forum for Inventions and Innovations. Of course, you know about the establishment of Royal Society of England, or like that, right? The inventions in the area of science and innovations started, right? Because you see, the very century, the Victorian era brought a kind of scientific wave, isn't it? You see invention of telephone, you see invention of steam engine, or even the new theory of evolution with Charles Darwin's Origin of Species published in 1859. All these things brought a lot of changes. So this desirable developments in the city attracted the population. When the rural unemployment was there, people started migrating to the cities, and cities become center of attraction. People started their inflow into the city, and huge population growth took place. As part of that, you see uh, over population density of population increased in the cities, and not only population increase, mortality rate, death rate also increased with the spread of epidemics and severe health problems. So likewise, the basic characteristics of the city and the countryside uh, in Victorian England provided lot of scope for literature to respond. So therefore, the literature of the era gave widespread response. The city also appeared, the idea of the city also highlighted in the literature of the England of that era. They reflected on the various trends, the way things were going on, the industrialization, for example, employment opportunities, emergence of new opportunities, or even pollution. All these things were, or exploitation of workers. See, you observe in Bleak House, for example, Dickens. So everywhere you observe, lot of focus was given on the prevailing or major trends of the age. So therefore, when we come to the literature of this particular age, there was an ambivalent attitude. They highlighted social problems on the one hand, and they also highlighted the delight of the age. Some people highlighted the delight of the age. See, as we see in the rural England, the countryside England, Thomas Hardy, for example, who created his Wessex novels, creating his pictures Wessex as the center, and threw light on the countryside of the England. Similarly, here in the as per the idea of the city, many writers set up their novels, particularly in city centers. Maybe you see Waverley, for example, or the Scott's novels. So Waverley novels, so they focused on the city centers, the royal parts also, and even factory or industrial setup also, like we see in Dickens novels. So even writers, poets also focused on, they sometimes brought the contrast between the countryside and the city side. Best example we have is Arnold's uh, Dover Beach or the Scholar Gypsy. It's a kind of contrasting between both. This contrast was there even before this age. For example, you see, if you see William Shakespeare's As You Like It, that was a best example where the country and the city life, the court and the rustic life were brought into contrast. Similar kind of trend or contrasting between the rural and the urban England was continued in Victorian age too. Another interesting part of this literature is journalism. Journalists within a new class which became popular during this era, they also tried to overview the trends of the age. Likewise, literature with all varieties and with various genres provided a widespread response to the happenings of the age. So likewise, we observe the idea of the country life and the city documents a rapid and unprecedented social changes during the Victorian England. Lot of changes were going on, unprecedented. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಮೊದಲು ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅದು, ಅಂತಹ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಮಯ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಯಿತು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. And all these trends naturally provided food for thought. Therefore, we see they reflected in the large scale production, exuberant production of literature through various genres produced during this era. Thank you for watching.